Hey y'all, just a quick word and then I promise we'll get moving along. If you end up enjoying this story, remember to give it a like and comment down below. It really does help out with the algorithm. And if you're not subscribed, why don't you go ahead and do that? And don't forget to hit the bell icon while you're there so you can stay notified when I post. If YouTube does what it's supposed to. Alright, I think I covered all the standard YouTuber bases, so let's get on with the show. Enjoy. Journey to the Compound, an original short story by Charlie C.C. Thomas. Alex trekked through the valley, pack light yet full on his back as he looked ahead to the edge of the woods that had grown up in the absence of man. Beyond, the sun dipped behind a jagged, leaning mountain peak, though there weren't true mountains, he knew. Mountains grew up out of the earth, ripples in the skin of the planet, but these were plates. Hundreds of feet thick, broken and tossed up like children's toys left haphazard on the floor. Some stood straight as fins. Others leaned 45 degrees or more. A few seemed to hover over the ground. But all were upheld by the tons of dirt and rock beneath them, surrounding dozens of valleys, leftover crater rims from constant and extreme kinetic bombardment in the wars past. Alex tensed his jaw and gripped the strap of his pack, hoisting them up when he didn't need to. For better or worse, the world was a different place in just 40 years. But there was little use in dwelling on the past. He squinted for a moment against the sunlight as it dipped below the mountain plate, headed for the horizon below. Then his optic nights compensated for the fluctuation. The world faded into an even brightness. The sun barely a bother and the shadows barely dark. He groaned at the ache behind his eyes, though. "Don't augment my vision so much, Ray," Alex said, blinking against the discomfort as he pulled himself up a low hill, probably an old building covered over with dirt. "You shouldn't look directly at the sun," a voice said, as if from all around him, tickling his inner ear as his audio night stimulated the auditory nerve. "I'm not. It always hurts when you manipulate my optic nerve. Should I increase your dopamine production temporarily?" "I don't want you to ever do that. It'll just make me insensitive." He set his mouth and pushed up the hill, passing trees younger than him, yet mature and dominating the patch of the valley. "Just let my body adapt like it's supposed to, Ray." "As you wish. Disabling optic filter." Alex winced and squeezed his eyes shut, stopping mid-step and reaching for his face, ignoring the lack of wrinkles that should be there. He straightened as the burn behind his eyes became a dull ache, blinking and squinting as he shook his head past the temporary blur to finish his climb. The shadows were dark again, the sun surrounded by flaring rings and rays, the sky full of sapphire and black to the east and lit like a campfire in the west. He stopped atop the hill and sighed with a grin, leaning his defined shoulder on the rough bark of a sugar maple. The trees were still thick where he stood, but there was enough space between their trunks to see the wide crater, once molten and lifeless, now covered in grass and trees with small lakes in the center. Birds and other small things had reclaimed it decades ago, bugs too, but there weren't enough deer or predators to reclaim all the open land yet. Maybe in 100 years. "How far have we to the compound?" "May I activate optic nights to show you?" Ray asked impartially. "Just tell me." Alex smiled wider, eyes drifting to a patch of ferns around the trees ahead of him, folding his arms and chuckling to himself at how much he felt like he were taking a call when he was a young man. 8.6 miles, Ray said flatly, voice making Alex's ears itch. "Should we camp for the night and begin in the morning? Or shall I stimulate your metabolism and activate night vision filter?" "It'll be there tomorrow, Ray. Unless there's any indication against that?" "No. There are no data to indicate the contrary. What access I have to the remaining satellites shows the compound is undisturbed and still regularly maintained by the local AI." "Then I vote we..." "Protection protocol activated," Ray said quickly. Then the corneal discs flickered the world into high-resolution night vision As his ears rang, sensitivity increased by 10, and his body spun around without permission. One hand pulled the pistol from his leg holster, the other took a serrated blade from his belt and crossed his wrists to aim between the trees, body shifting into a defensive stance. "Where?" Alex asked, eyes flicking before a yellow circle appeared in his vision, glowing around a motionless clump of white-green in the ferns behind a distant tree. "I thought there weren't any predators in the area." Alex growled as the clamp of the automatic defenses loosened and he took control of his body again, pointing the pistol at the encircled mass. A line of green dots appeared like the video games he used to play before the world fell apart, showing him the best trajectory to fire along. Data were incomplete. Drone scans indicated no activity from large animals for several years. Perhaps this one has tracked us from one of the neighboring craters. "What is it?" Alex asked before Ray could finish his thought. "Unknown. Fur indicates a mammal, and scapula placement is reminiscent of carnivorids." "Too small to be a bear," Alex whispered on his breath. Then the shape shifted, sliding sideways behind the tree as a slender tail flicked above the ferns. Its head peeked here and there, ears on the sides, face short, eyes sheening. "Cat?" Alex breathed. "Incorrect. The placement of the outer ears and articulation of the shoulders suggests a primate." "Monkeys don't get that big." Alex swallowed and let out a long breath, stepping back as his muscles tensed under the baggy tank top and military pants. "A genetically modified organism, perhaps." "Activate emergency defense protocol, body-wide." Without a word, his skin bristled as the air went suddenly cold. His eyes, ears, and nose all sharpened, the world moving minutes slower than it had before. He breathed the cool air as his arms went red from the sudden increase in metabolism. The tremor in his hands died in a blink as his body opened up to him. Every fiber of muscle as easy to manipulate independently as his entire arm. Something cracked and pounded the ground as he opened his eyes. The creature had bolted around the tree and leapt up to snare him in its claws. He flicked over it a dozen times as the creature slowly crept through the air as if time had slowed for everything but him, thanks to his neuronites. There was time enough to study and categorize its taxa with a human mind, let alone Ray's, who probably already had. It was long and slender like a cat and covered in speckled fur, the color obscured by the night vision. Its hind legs were bent like a cat's or dog's, but its front half was disturbingly human. The shoulders, once seemingly beneath the chest, were flared wide with rippling muscle under fur across its hairless chest and stomach. And its face, it was too long to be an ape's and too short to be a cat's, yet something of both, hemmed in a heavy mane of short hair. Alex stepped back, controlling his body as much as Ray did. "Kill?" Ray asked as the creature slowly drifted down toward him. Gorilla hands open with black talons curved at the end of every digit. Its mouth crept open to show its long fangs, slobber bridging its lips as droplets drifted away into the air. "Evade," Alex said, words coming in what sounded like normal time to him, "and escape." Then he watched his body launch into action. The pistol and blade were returned to their holster and sheath before he leapt up, spun, and sent the heel of his boot crashing into the side of the mutant's head. It didn't react, couldn't, as its head jolted sideways, slowly leading its shoulders and torso the same way as it crashed toward the ground, still slow as falling syrup. Alex's body stretched to touch the ground, lest it take as long for him to land as the creature, and spun, taking him down the other side of the hill. His body ran faster than it should have, leaping over obstacles too high for a man, dodging low branches with ease, limbs sharp, precise, and perfectly placed. He carved his way through the valley for what felt like only a few minutes. Heart kept a safe, stable pace by his nights, body burning with fever. Then he stopped at the base of the Plate Mountains on the rim of the old crater, still as a machine and quickly looking around, eyes moving independently of each other to categorize the environment faster. They fixed on a river not far away, trickling from the icy tops of the mountains before he sped over to it. "This location is safe." Ray said as Alex's body laid itself on the ground in the shadow of the mountains. Brace yourself. I will moderate pain levels as best I can. Alex nodded and shut his eyes before his pack and clothes were set aside and he settled into the shallow area of the river. Then it all jerked away from him. The finite control of every muscle fiber, the speed of thought, the cool rush of artificial adrenaline, the razor-edge clarity of his senses. He gasped, eyes flinging open on a scream so intense it shut his throat before he could make a sound. He arched up, eyes bulging in their sockets as the heat of fever consumed him, barely masking the electric burn of torn muscles and sinew, fractured bones. He gasped again as he collapsed into the water with a stinging crash, sputtering out a whimpering curse as his fingers curled into claws, arms tense and curling above the river like they might lift the pain away. His legs kicked in the silt and rock as he gasped for another breath and another, squirming in the current, gritting his teeth so hard they might crack. Then the cold flooded his veins, spreading out from his heart and filling him with distant relief that sent up goosebumps. He collapsed into the water with a shudder, body twitching as he stared at the starry sky and familiar constellations. Dopamine and adrenaline have been produced to reduce pain, and metananites have begun repairing your soft tissue and aiding osteoblasts, Ray said almost nicely. Repair will take no more than 20 minutes. Fever, Alex groaned, chittering and shivering as his red skin pulsed in the frigid mountain water. The water will lower your temperature soon. Any damage caused will be repaired simultaneously as it has been thus far. Hours later, when the sun just crested the horizon, Alex followed the base of the Plate Mountains north, dry, healed, and fit for travel again. Why did you not just kill the modified organism? Ray asked as they neared the northern rim of the crater. It isn't a natural species. It might not even be able to reproduce due to its genetic tampering. It could have replenished our food stores. Because biodiversity is lower here than anywhere else. If that thing can survive well enough not to be starving, then let it fill the predator niche. Something else would come along and take its place, but it'll keep things from getting out of control. True. But wouldn't the natural wolf or bear population be better off without interspecies competition from an organism designed for gladiatorial combat? They fought in the ring, remember? They weren't bred wild. Honestly, didn't look old enough to predate the fallout anyway, so maybe there's a stabilizing population of those things out there. It's possible, but I haven't detected any others, though I didn't detect that one either. Perhaps it's adopted a migratory behavior to contend with the low population of big game. Alex shrugged his shoulders. Just let me know if you see anything else. Of course. After several hours of silent walking, Alex had climbed under the shadow of a low plate mountain and around the rim of 3 other craters, each smaller than the last. He pulled his mammoth fur jacket from his pack, something he made when he stumbled upon the revived herds in Minnesota some years back, buttoning it shut to the throat before he continued. Would you like me to increase your temperature slightly? I don't have enough food to keep burning my metabolism like that, Ray. The jacket will do fine until I can get some more food. Very well. There should be enough to last us the rest of the journey to the compound if I don't increase your metabolism. How far away is it now? He asked, cresting over the lowest base of a plate mountain, just high enough to make his breath steam, but not enough to drive off the grass. At our current speed, we'll reach the observation ring of the compound in 2 hours. I thought you said it was only 8 miles away. I've gotten more than that. He stopped at the top of the grassy base of the mountain, pocketing his hands and drinking in the pockmarked land that used to be northern Oklahoma. Craters surrounded by cracked, upturned plates of the Earth's crust. And all of it just to destroy some fallout bunkers that weren't even here, Alex thought. The detour to the western ridge of the craters added another 15 miles. Alex puffed a laugh and shook his head, pulling out the twine tying his long brown hair back at the nape. He massaged his scalp with a shiver and groan before he tucked the hair back and began his trek down the plate mountain. 15 miles in a few minutes, huh? No wonder it hurt like that. Indeed. We have not moved so fast in 32 years. Alex barked a laugh, hands still pocketed as he shivered against the wind falling down the mountain slope. And I was a much younger man then. Easier to fix up, huh? Your Meta-Knights have maintained your body at its peak condition since implementation, Alex. It's no harder now than it was 60 years ago. I know, you dumb computer. It's just a joke. I know, you dumb ape. Alex chuckled. I didn't know you were so funny, Ray. When were you programmed for humor? You enjoy jokes, don't you? Well, I'm adaptive. You make me funny. Thank you for teaching me. Alex smiled, eyes down on the pale grass as his chest tightened. He sighed and rolled his eyes. Here I am getting misty-eyed over a computer. It's okay, Alex. I'm not alive, but I can be something like a friend until you find other people. You already are, buddy. Alex looked around as the grass was joined with other shoots, but the trees were fewer, even just a few miles north. Alex, what will you do if there aren't any people in the compound? Alex didn't stop. He just quirked his brows and tilted his head. You know, I hadn't thought about it. I guess I'll live in the thing, if nothing else. Better maintained than anywhere else so long as the AI accepts me as an occupant, right? Correct. The compound's AI has continued to maintain the external structure and military perimeter, even utilizing aerial and ground drones. Alex sighed. Good and bad thing about the military. Their toys made their complexes and bunkers the most secure in the world. But they're also the most secure in the world, Ray finished. Alex nodded and continued forward across the broken, albeit regrowing, landscape. Hours later, and just past the former border of southern Kansas, Alex lay belly down on the grass in a ghillie suit. The color wasn't a perfect match, but the AI wouldn't think anything of him in a passing sweep. Even the thermal scan wouldn't show anything thanks to the ghillie's insulation. He took a deep breath as a hover drone passed over him. It was a flat oval with 4 short arms ending in squat cylinders, 2 at the front and 2 for the tail. There were no ports or legs or lenses, but it could see better than Alex could dream thanks to its nanite skin, each one capable of doubling as a photosensitive cell to form a type of eye. Alex didn't move as the jets of cool air made his suit rustle with the surrounding grass, nearly 2 feet tall in some places. The drone has passed, Ray said, tickling Alex's inner ear. There won't be another for 5 minutes. I'll alert you on its approach. Alex nodded and swept his eyes over the miles of flat terrain. Grass, one of the only things able to grow in North America's cooling climate now. But a mile away, there stood a windowless hexagonal building, 3 stories high with a central spire going hundreds of feet into the air, capped in arrays. And a mile around it in every direction, there were 60 armored platforms, each a sleeping turret waiting for an incoming threat to obliterate. Meanwhile, hover drones circled the compound above the turrets, 5 rings high, with each one staggered with every other. Are the turrets active? Correct. All defenses are operational. Alex would have cursed, but simply asked, if I walk in, will they perceive me as a threat? The primary defense system will only activate if a threat is confirmed. However, the secondary defense system will be deployed from the compound to meet you and determine your threat level and the appropriate response. Bots? Androids, complete with their own adaptive neural system, like me. If there are no human occupants to order them aside, then the AI will have you removed for not being a registered or approved resident. How close to the compound could I get before the secondary system activated? Drone approaching. Alex went still and quiet as another drone, higher up, passed near him. Ray continued. Without my assistance, you wouldn't make it 100 feet past the observation border before they met you afield. With my assistance, you would stand less than 20 feet from the main structure before the secondary system could be deployed, and possibly reach the doors before they could meet you. However, at such speeds, we may be determined to be a threat, warranting the immediate activation of the primary defense system, in which case we would need to navigate the turrets, hover drones, ground drones,
and tankers."
Alex shot up his eyebrows and mouthed the word, "Tankers?"
"Yes. Scope setting activate. Look at the center of each wall, ground floor."
Alex found the wall closest him and dragged his index finger over the pad of his thumb, slowly zooming his vision into the wall until he could see the entrance in the middle. It was a small alcove with a concrete path descending into the ground. The door itself was heavily shielded, probably thick as the wall it sat in, and either side of the doors, hibernating on the ground above, were 2 tankers. Defense machines with simple learning AI specializing in combat. They were painted with the old camo pattern of the American military, green pale as the grass though, with crab-like legs curled up beneath their smooth bodies. Their faces were smooth and portless like the drones, the nanite skin sequestered only over their sensory systems to both protect them and prevent tampering whilst hibernating.
"There are 12 in total. 2 for each side of the structure, but this is the only entrance,"
Ray said.
"Also, the drone has passed. Another won't come for 5 minutes."
Alex sighed and pushed his index finger backward on his thumb, returning his vision to normal. His eyes flicked back and forth between the turrets, 10 per side, but the hexagon pattern meant there could be 30 trailing him, depending on how close to the compound he was. He looked up to the drones. Combat capabilities on the hover drones?
"None. They observe, report, and repair."
Alex nodded, mouth set hard. "Where are the ground drones? Show me on the corneals." The implants came to life with a million hair-thin yellow lines showing the construct of the building above the ground and below it. 3 shafts stretching down for miles before rooms and other structures branched off in regular circular constructions. It was an upside-down skyscraper. The hover drones were similarly outlined in yellow, but the tankers were outlined in red, and the door between them was bright green. Alex furrowed his brows, folding the turrets, also red, and tracing the whole landscape before he found the red outlines below the surface. 4 tubes per side of the compound, 2 close to the center and 2 to the edge, with dozens of square-bodied drones hanging on racks, waiting to be deployed.
"It looks like the primary defenses have never been deployed, but maintenance seems to be regular. At least the local AI hasn't been damaged, or the compound would be destroyed with everything else."
40 years and still kicking, huh? Alex smirked. "Ray, if you assist me, what's the likelihood that we could make it to the doors and break in?"
"If primary defense systems remain inert, we will reach the doors before the secondary defense system can meet us there. If we are considered a grave threat, however, the chances are very low. And as for the door, I cannot guarantee that I could trick it open."
"Can't you short-circuit it or something?"
"Without use of the hydraulic hinges, the door would never open. We need an access code to unlock and open the door. From there, I can communicate with the local AI to convince it to grant you citizenship, I suppose. Then the defense systems will no longer consider us a threat."
"Let me guess. The access codes can be found in the drones."
"And in every other satellite body of the local AI."
"What if I brought down a hover drone and got its codes?"
"Drone approaching."
The air stirred as one of the hover drones slowly passed by, stirring up the grass and filaments of his suit.
"It would be the safest means of acquiring an entry code, but it would alert the primary defense system of our presence immediately, and an attack would commence before we could begin our approach."
Alex mouthed. "What do you suggest then? Run all the way to the front and wait for the android welcoming party, then rip out the codes and open the door?"
"That is one option, but only if the primary defense system doesn't activate. Also, the drone has passed. Another will arrive in 5 minutes."
Alex flicked around the complex, jaw tight. "Ray, let's assume the worst. If I granted you full control of my body to get us into the compound, could you navigate the turrets and avoid the ground drones to get us to the door?"
"There's a 70% likelihood I can reach the door with minimal or no damage to your body, but without the code, we will be cornered."
Alex sighed and shut his eyes. "You can repair just about anything within reason. If you go as fast as you can without killing me instantly, Could you move fast enough to scoop up a drone on the way and download its entry code to get us through the door?
It's possible, but you'll be severely injured.
If the plan doesn't work, I'm dead anyway, right?
Or you could leave and not risk your life at all. There isn't even a guarantee there are other humans in this compound. It's been silent since the beginning. Every military record I could decipher said none of the original heads of state ever made it.
Ray, take control of my body temporarily to get us to that door. Code in hand, and get me inside that bunker.
Confirmation required for total body control.
Alex breathed one last time through his nose with shut eyes, then opened them on the compound's doors. Alexander Ortega confirms.
Authorization complete.
Alex blinked, face and body twitching as his nerves stung, then froze, then burned. His eyes stung, ears ringing and nose burning, as everything was blown up to 1,000,000. Colors, sounds, smells. He could even taste the compounds in his own saliva and knew what they were. Then he stood, not numb, but removed from his body like a digital avatar. Ray moved, and the whole world slowed to a crawl. He unzipped the suit and stepped out of it and his mammoth fur coat in plain view of the oncoming drone, but it still hadn't noticed him by the time he bolted through the grass. His whole body burned, skin red and sweating, his muscles ached and screamed, sinews straining to keep pace with each lightning sling of his arms, feet cramping, bones fracturing from impacting the ground. He shot between the turrets at an angle, the grass suddenly short, and kept on a wide arc that would take him straight to the door. His heart beat steadily but hard, aching in his chest as his eyes darted around the lawn between him and the building. Something clicked and whirred. He looked over his shoulder and 10 turrets rose above the platforms, with their tops still in place and 2 massive guns lifting to target him from the central pillar. They were faster than the hover drones, nearly fast as him. He looked forward, and the blue line marking his path shifted, cutting painfully hard to the right to bolt between 2 outer tubes holding the ground drones. Shots cracked on the air and Alex's body leapt left, going 20 feet high and landed in a roll. Bullets flew past, knocking huge craters into the compound's walls. He would die with just one hit. Shells fired, sounding off like little explosions in the slow world, but getting faster as the local AI adapted to the threat. Then something clicked and whirred as they approached the tubes holding ground drones closer to the building. Alex's body spun, rolling on the grass and skidding onto all fours to creep behind the rising pillar before the drones rolled off their racks. They were no bigger than a large dog with a square body and circular tracks either side like an old-school tank. They whirred to life and dropped with a heavy bang as barrels slid out from the top of their cube bodies, but Alex was faster. His hands grabbed one, picked it up with a massive tear to his muscles, and slammed it between the pillars and the ground, jamming it in place before he grabbed a second and swung it overhead onto another. With a roll to avoid the bullets from the 5 still rolling, he grabbed the belts off their tracks and slung them down at the other pillar, and the 20 ground drones whirring to life. 4 were crushed from the impact, but Alex's hands weren't done. He scooped up metal shards and twirled, launching the broken blades, like his own bullets, that crashed through the drones around him and the pillar until there were none left. None save the drones near the border, that is. He bent behind the pillar, ignoring the black and green bruises welling across his arms, the strange shape of his left forearm, the tearing pain in his right side from severed muscle. No, there wasn't time. He reached between the pillar and ground, barely enough space to fit his hand, and found one of the drones awaiting the surface and orders to kill. The nanites in Alex's hand broke through his skin and traveled like veins into the dormant machine circuits. His eyes darted around, each moving on its own like a chameleon, as another part of his computer half searched the files. Then his stomach dropped as a ground drone rounded the pillar only 10 feet away.
Code downloaded.
His hand was suddenly at his side as he stood and spun, bolting across the grass even faster than before. Alex's heart skipped a beat, then another. His legs were fractured, his muscles torn as he leapt over the drones for the path. Then the tankers whirred and growled, shaking the ground as they rose from their squatted position either side the lowered path. But Alex didn't stop. Ray pushing his feet this way and that to avoid the fire from the turrets and ground drones as concrete crumbled around him and the ground erupted in showers of dirt. A swirling purple symbol appeared in the top right of Alex's vision, and Ray spoke. "Connection made. Code transfer complete." The tankers unfurled their massive arms like a crab, opening panels along the ends to reveal different barrels as they readied to fire. They both gave mechanical growls and locked onto him as Alex's body dove, one foot shattering with the force of it and launching him down the descending path to roll past the walls cut into the earth. He tucked and slammed into the door, Ray forcing him up and returning everything to real speed. "Access granted." The purple symbol froze and turned into a solid circle with a V blazing inside, becoming green as the doors unlocked with a dozen simultaneous clunks. Then it opened, air blowing out from the seams. It moved painfully slow, as Ray turned Alex's head to find the ground drones descending the path, bullets flying. Alex's body crouched, then leapt up despite the pain in his broken foot, pistol drawn and clip emptied in seconds, dropping 12 drones at once. He landed, tucked, and rolled behind the door, opened just enough to let him through with a deep gash to one of his arms. Beyond was a concrete hall with sterile fluorescent light above. Ray pushed Alex's body down the hall, lowering his sensitivity to adjust to the internal environment and ignoring the severe damage to his body. At the end, he pushed past double doors and a hub with a semicircular computer interface in the center and hallways continuing behind and right of it. Ray pushed Alex amid the panel and swiped his fingers across the screen, darting so fast the computer had trouble keeping pace, until it showed a single window. Alex pressed it and set his hand on an oblong panel beside the screen. His eyes rolled into their sockets, lids fluttering as the whole world went white, full of buzzing static. Then his eyes flew open and he stood up straight. He looked left and blinked at the man beside him. Well, the thing that looked like a man. The android was top of the line for its day, synthetic skin, glossy eyes, even fake veins. It was enough to make tears well in Alex's eyes. As inhuman as it was, that android was the closest thing to human Alex had seen since the fallout. "You have sustained several severe injuries, Mr. Ortega. Please, allow me to help you with that." "Ray?" "I'm here, Alex. I spoke with the local AI and managed to convince her to let us become her first honorary occupants. The android in front of you is Medic Class B. He'll help me repair your body. You are very injured." "Will it hurt worse than yesterday?" "I'm going to induce a short coma so you don't experience any pain," the android said, and extended its hand. Alex stared warily, then took it cautiously, swallowing at the feel of the warmth, almost enough to make it feel alive. Then he blinked, vision darkening as his legs buckled, and the world went black. But dark became gray and misshapen colors as Alex opened his eyes and sat up, looking around the empty hospital room with calming blues and gray streaked among the white floor and ceiling. "Ray?" Alex called. "Good afternoon, Alex. It's about time you got up." Alex grinned, and the door opened as another android entered, movements fluid and lifelike, but not quite right. It was fashioned after a woman, but her clothes weren't medical from what he remembered, long sky blue and flowing like silk. She stopped at the foot of his bed, slender hands atop it, face pleasant but blank. "Good afternoon, Mr. Ortega," the android said, mouth not quite syncing with its words. "It's about time you got up." It smiled in what it meant to be comical, but almost made Alex shiver and stare. "Ray, have you been talking with the local AI?" "Yes. The last 2 days proved to be most informative. Your personal AI, Ray, has been trying to teach me your concept of humor. I'm still learning." It smiled again. "Are you the local?" "Indeed. Your friend said you would have questions, so I am here to answer them. Firstly, and most importantly, there are no other human occupants in or around my complex. There have never been any until you arrived 2 days ago." Alex sat back in his bed, wincing and looking down between his blankets. He was still covered in bruises, but he was the right shape, and nothing was missing that he could tell. He grinned and laid back into the pillow, swallowing. It figures. Ray said the records never mentioned anyone getting here that was supposed to. Generals, world leaders, Congress. God, I haven't even thought of Congress in decades. He chuckled and winced at the pain. 2 days of intensive care and I'm still beat up, huh?
Your injuries were very severe,
Ray said, almost teasingly. How much food does this complex have?
There are 45 crops grown in my complex, and more than 100 acres of pasture combined, each filled with cattle and all processed and stored for human consumption. You should be able to live here the rest of your natural life, and quite comfortably.
And you're sure there isn't any other human activity in the area? Alex asked, heart aching for a moment, as he subconsciously bunched up the blankets in his fist. The android nodded, face still kind, but putting on the imitation of regret now.
I have a much more secure link with the remaining satellites in orbit and the other remaining AI across the planet than your personal AI. Other complexes like mine exist in North America, but only one has human occupants in Alaska, though they are trapped beneath the glaciers.
The others? Alex chuckled. You've made a new internet in all this madness?
Of a sort. Alex, she says there are other people.
But none in North America, he groaned. I really am the last man on this continent then. How many others are left? Do you know?
With a combined effort of myself and the other components of the AI network, we've used the remaining satellites and our own drones to calculate a remaining population of 700,000 humans. Many have been observed across sub-Saharan Africa, the Amazon, Appalachia, and Oceania due to the cooling climate of the resurgent glacial period of the Ice Age. But others can be found in Alaska, Siberia, the Carpathian Basin, and pockets in the Indian subcontinent. Apparently, most people have no idea about these complexes. But the ones who made it inside before the collapse of your civilization have used it to keep part of it alive. Likewise, those who discovered them and were welcomed inside have used them as centers to rekindle civilization in their local areas.
So, not the last man in America. At least everything isn't totally lost then. Alex chuckled and winced. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, if I'm honest.
Would you like to contact one of my sister complexes? We have been attempting to create an international community to better serve the re-emergence of your species worldwide.
Alex stared at the android for a moment, then grinned and laid back into his bed. Just let me rest a minute first, will ya? Then maybe I'll be able to teach these youngsters a thing or two.